Texas. The background on this shooter obviously dead, but they are finding that, in part, obvious as the function of his tattoos. I mean, I guess there are people who put swastikas and other Nazi paraphernalia on tattooed on themselves, and right-wing death squad.
Like Harlan Crow, it's just there to remind him of the horrors of the
right, exactly,
of the Nazis.
And this in the wake of that shooting, and incidentally, we should also say the right-wing commentators are working overtime to sort of distance themselves from the fact that this guy was a big fan, supposedly, of libs of TikTok and Tim Pool and whatnot.
Nick Fuentes, Daily Stormer.
I mean, none of this should be terribly surprising.
Really enjoyed Tim Pool's conversation with Elijah Schaefer, the guy who was too racist for the Blaze.
Right, and look, I mean, there's obviously a lot of talk about the idea of stochastic terrorism. I will say this. The United States, under the Obama administration, assassinated the so-called radical cleric, Anwar al-Awlaki, who was an American citizen, assassinated him because he would go on and preach a ideology that encouraged people to go out and attack Americans. I think it was. I don't know what their official reasoning was, but it was an extrajudicial killing on the part of the United States. So at the very least, and I happen to think that that should be illegal in this country, but the United States government certainly believes that there can be a direct link between that type of agitation and harm on national security. And I don't know how many times there has to be these type of connections. This is not a random situation. This is not a one-off. Let's put it that way. And so, I don't know how the people who pump this stuff out. Ben Shapiro was cited by another guy, a killer years ago.
In Quebec.
Bissonnette.
And I don't know how they live with themselves, frankly. I mean, no doubt there's, this happens across the political spectrum, but the distribution of that, there's just every study that on any type of political violence in this country shows that right-wingers have engaged in the vast majority of it. Mm-hmm. To the extent that it's political. And when they cite more or less the same crew of people and the same hatreds for marginalized people. And should we make what they're saying illegal, like they do in a country, let's say like Germany, for instance? A lot of these people, if they were, on YouTube in Germany, I don't know, a certain percentage of them would end up in jail, I have a feeling. Certainly would be shut down. No, we have a different system in this country. We have a First Amendment. People are allowed to, at least to say it publicly. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be carried by the platform that's distributing it.
And a lot of them aren't. I mean, like the Daily Stormer or Fuentes are not on these major platforms. We don't hear, it's all about where you draw the line. All these free speech warriors on the right are upset because their video, say recreating the death of George Floyd is demonetized. But there's always lines that are drawn. It's just like there are people that go right up to the edge so they can be on these major platforms and still say very similar kinds of things.
Right. And, Elon Musk is, opening up its, fascist Twitter and, what is it? Blue Sky can't get here fast enough as far as I'm concerned. But the really amazing thing is understand that when people are watching this stuff, they're supporting it. They're supporting a platform that is platforming stuff like this. You watch Tim Pool who's featuring, these racists and bigots on there, more or less, giving them a free ride, understand that he's supporting them and you're supporting him. That's basically what it comes down to. Libs at TikTok, same thing. All of it. Tucker Carlson, all of it. Same thing. Texas, because apparently they're, starting to notice that gun violence has, quadrupled there, or doubled at least in 10 years, more deaths by gun. And in the wake of 8 people dead, including some of whom are children, one kid, a 6-year-old kid, lost his 3-year-old brother, his mother, and his father. I mean, and that comes just a week after some guy took his AR-15 style rifle, whatever it was, semi-automatic, and shot 5 people because he didn't want to have to quiet down or whatever it was, or stop doing his target practice. The year after Uvalde, with 19 people, mostly kids, killed, they have taken the huge step of raising the minimum age to purchase AR-15 rifles to 21. We'll see if it passes. From 18 to 21.
Big whoop.
I mean, it's couldn't be more symbolic and less relevant.
These kinds of reforms, I almost wish just wouldn't happen, because it's like
they're just letting the air out.
They want to look like they're doing something without doing anything at all. I mean, that wouldn't have done anything to prevent this latest mass shooting that they're supposedly doing that in response to. This psycho neo-Nazi was in his 30s.
Yep.
The problem is not, when can we access these weapons of war? It's the fact that we can access these weapons of war. And it's not about, can the cops get it right before they decide to murder 20 people? It's the fact that they have the ability to do it in general. So these kinds of technocratic tweaks, red flag laws, I include in this way, and the ones that are just so on the margins are really not even worth our time. It's about banning the sale and manufacturing of this weaponry in this country.
Do we have that graph, Bradley, from yesterday? Let's pull this up. I mean, let's just
in Texas.
Let's just come up with some ideas as to why we might have a graph like this. From 2014 to, what was this, to 2022?
So less than a 10-year 8
years
period.
Matt, can you look up? This is 8 year. It is
It's from the
these are
Post.
Incidentally, these are firearm deaths, not shootings, but deaths. And I think this is from 2021 maybe. Over the course of 7 years, it goes from under 3,000 to 4,600. This is deaths. Was there a 35% increase in population in Texas over those 7 years? Did we have a 35% increase in violent video games produced over those 7 years?
35% increase in, bad mental health. It's all about mental health.
I mean, this is about changes in their gun laws and all of the money from gun manufacturers that get poured in to right-wing media and groups to so-called normalize gun use.
Crowder.
2015 or 2015, they were going down to the Piggly Wiggly, and 10 guys would come out with their AR-15s to go in and buy a Slurpee just so that they could just say that, we're just making gun use, making people feel comfortable.
Look at it. I want you to look at it.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I mean, and in that interview that was done on Fox News yesterday with Greg Abbott, they showed the polling around things like background checks and banning assault weapons and having a 30-day waiting period before people buy those weapons. I'm in favor of all of those, and so is an overwhelming majority of the American people. The problem with like selling this in that way is that there is no, and we had a caller also kind of touch on this as well, there is not right now political consequences for doing nothing on this front. Like there's no equivalent mechanism on the left that the gun lobby and the enthusiasm that it's engendered with the Republican base has on the right. And like, I don't know how we solve that, but we have to create a mechanism to get them to feel the pain on this topic, because it's just not translating electorally.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
I don't know what the answer is with that either. I mean,
and the part of it is that, like, honestly, Republicans want our public spaces to be unsafe. They are against public good.
Homeschool.
It's all about private property, militias touring the streets. Like, let's make our public schools really bleed them dry. No free school lunches. Pull your kids out to do homeschooling or go to a charter or a private school. Privatize everything. Our public spaces should not be safe for everybody. That's why they're okay with the guy going into Starbucks with the weapon of war, because it's all about, I have my own personal fiefdom, and that helps on the micro level undercut the administrative state and government largely, because they don't want public good. They only want private empowerment.
all right. I mean, I honestly, I don't know. Somebody's asking, like, Roni fan, you've been around longer than any of your listeners. I hope that's not exactly true, but what will be the final straw for gun reform, in your opinion? I am of the mind that honestly, what you need to do is, in terms of final straw, it's going to be when the Supreme Court is no longer 6-3 conservative, and when it's 5-4, with the 4 conservatives, essentially, and they revisit the Heller case, then they say this is absurd. Rob from Plus, Minneapolis. If it wouldn't have prevented the latest mass, then why do it? That's Emma and Sam saying this, not the NRA. Well, you should really put into context, because it's quite clear that the reason why the Republican legislature is doing this is not because they're interested in gun reform, but they're interested in something that is going to alleviate the pressure on them to do something. And so this little bit of letting the air out of the tires is, if this was just the beginning of them attempting to actually impose some form of meaningful gun reform, then I would be for it. But it's quite clear that this is just a way to essentially pretend like they give a shit. They don't. That's the difference between us and the NRA. That should be fairly obvious. I'm not saying that somebody should vote against it, but I'm also saying that people shouldn't buy the fact that there's actually any type of meaningful interest in gun reform coming out of the Texas state legislature. You have to be an idiot to
I'm
believe that.
saying that Texas law Democrats should say this is not something we're passing without anything actually meaningful behind it, because it's just a fig leaf for the Republicans. Why would you gift that to them?
It's to get them through a news cycle.
That's called playing politics and actually trying to change something, right? As opposed to, like, I mean, they just did this with the mental health care thing, right? Didn't Abbott put some millions into mental health care? We have no idea where that money went. It didn't create any, like, socialized system in Texas. So why give them a nonsense reform when we need larger ones?
I think what's going to happen in terms of Texas, the only time you're going to see any action there is, like, if they, just the look there. This is obvious. You look at that graph and you can see what's going on in Texas. And it's not like they're buying less guns there. It's getting exponential. And the more these shootings happen, the more people go out and buy more guns. This is just going to keep happening there. And it's going to happen at an increased rate.
It's going to happen all over the country because we live in a society. I mean, we need the only thing that's going to solve this is federalized legislation targeting sale and manufacture of weapons of war. What? That's it.
The only real opportunity, I think, for meaningful legislation on a federal level too will be essentially some type of like civil action against gun manufacturers for making a product that is knowingly making a product they know is dangerous. And the fact that they have had liability protection from our government is also indication that everybody knew that there was liability there. So I think it should be a pretty easy a slam dunk in terms of once they repeal that legislation. But who knows?